Call the meeting to order at 5:30. Let the minutes show that Trustee Brown is absent this evening, and we have 4 corrections and amendments to the agenda. The first is item 10A, which is approval of minutes of May 21st, May 31st, and June 4th. We need to change the minutes to reflect that Trustee Eric Martin is clerk, not Trustee Mark Nelson. Number 2 is 10E, approval of educational service contracts for 2024 to 2025. We need to remove paper tutor from the list of contracts. The third one is 10H, approval of King Consulting Services. We need to change that from an approval to a ratification. And item 14D, the public disclosure of ratification of 2024 to 2027 tentative agreement with RIPSIA. We have added attachment AB 1200 to that item, and there are copies in the back if the public would like to see them. Any questions about the changes to the agenda? All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll motion to approve.
Can I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with 1 absent. We will now convene to closed session. Call the meeting back to order at 6:04. All right, item number 4, case 2324-02-SD. Can I get a motion to approve 4A?
So move.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Roll call?
Trustee Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Aye.
Trustee Nelson,
Aye.
Trustee Wing.
Yes. All right, please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next up, we have a presentation from John Reed Elementary.
Hello. Sorry. Yes, so unfortunately, our principal, Christy Corbett, is not able to be here tonight. She's on vacation, but we are delighted to announce Christy Corbett as our new principal of John Reed Elementary. Christy has been with us for 2.5 years. She started off with Toddy Runner Park at John Reed, actually, as assistant principal. And then she moved to Evergreen and Monte Vista as assistant principal. And this past year, she's been at Evergreen full-time as assistant principal. Prior to that, she's worked in the Old Adobe School District for many, many years as a teacher, as a TOSA. She was very highly sought after for this role, and we're very excited to have her in the position.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you all know who she is because she's been here before for other presentations for Evergreen and Monte Vista, and she was sorry she couldn't be here tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. All right. Next, we have approval of employment agreement for district superintendent. So back in August 15th of 2023, so a little over, or not quite a year ago, the board and superintendent entered into a contract for employment of the superintendent as approved by the board for its regular meeting on August 15th for the term to begin on September 1st. Previously this month, the superintendent received a satisfactory evaluation for the 2023-2024 school year. At this time, it is the desire of the board to extend Superintendent Ituri's contract by 1 year. The term of this agreement shall commence July 1st, 2024 and continue through June 30th, 2027. Should the superintendent receive a satisfactory evaluation pursuant to this agreement, the agreement may be extended by the board for an additional year by action taken in open session at a regular meeting, so long as the term of the agreement does not exceed 4 years. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the employment agreement for District Superintendent Ituri. Can I get a second?
I second.
Do a roll call?
Trustee Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Nelson,
Aye.
Trustee Wing.
Yes. Thank you. And we're happy to have you for another year.
Yeah, thank you all very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's just been a joy to work with all of you and all the staff. So I'm very grateful to be continuing. So thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next we have public comments, items not on the agenda. I'm just excited we have public here tonight. Thank you, public, for coming. Yes. All right, so we're going to go over the logistics here a little bit. So please note this meeting is being recorded and live streamed at www.crpusd.org. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters not on the agenda when called for by the board president. Please keep your comments concise, brief, and limited to 3 minutes or less. A maximum of 20 minutes is allotted to each subject not appearing on the agenda. If there are more speakers than time allotted, I don't think we have that problem or that tonight, so we're good to go. The Brown Act restricts the board from considering any item not appearing on the posted agenda. So just so you guys know what that means is since it's not on the agenda, we can't actually like discuss it tonight and go back and forth. I just don't want you guys to think like you guys are talking and we're like, okay, great, thanks, have a nice night. So we're definitely hearing and listening, and then we can bring it up at a future board meeting for discussion or consideration. So I like to do students first because we are all here and centered around students, so that's how I have ordered it. So first up, we have Joy Holiday. Joy, do you not want to go first? You want to go second? You ready? You can do it. You want to go? Does it say, okay, is it Ivy Holiday? Oh, sorry. It looks like a J-O-Y to me. Let's go with Ivy. Sorry. Okay.
So, hello? Yes. So, my name is Ivy Holiday. I'm a former student of Technology High School, and I just wanted to address the creation of an actual music room on our campus and a little bit about how not having one has affected me. So personally, it's just been like a distraction in our learning environment and a danger to both, people and instruments with such a small space. And it affects our entire community because, especially when it comes to drama, they're not able to use our stage space either. And so they're forced to like practice in classrooms and like squeeze in desks and all this. And it takes a lot of our time that could be used for instruction to be moving things all the time and setting things up instead of just having our own cohesive space. So thank you. That's it.
Great. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Aaron.
Hi, I'm also here talking about the creation of a music room. Not having the music room has in my experience being at Tech, just the 1 year, I've had negative experiences with it. Usually, at the starts of classes or end of classes, and just notice tripping over instruments, tripping over stands, seats like that. And so having a different space dedicated to this would be really nice because I don't really have to have that worry, and I won't have those negative experiences, even though, at this point I really associate it with just it's like a certain quality of the band room at this point, just tripping over all the time. But another thing I'll say is due to it being extremely compact, and I think the past year having 50 students in the combined 2 classes, it causes yet again just a lot of chaos happening at the start and end of classes. And if you need to use the bathroom or do anything simple, it's always just a big hassle, and is very it interrupts the learning space always. And it's just having the dedicated space would be really nice. That is all.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. Next up, we have Ethan.
Hello? Okay. I'm here to speak on behalf of my father, who was not able to attend due to sickness. But he had a letter that I would like to read. It is with regret that I am unable to convey my sentiments in person. My name is Modesto Llanes. I'm the parent of a Tech a current Tech High student and a brand new alumnus. I understand my children will not benefit from any new construction in the district, but I will continue to advocate for the arts, academic or extracurricular. The arts provide a positive outlet for children's creative energies that are often stifled in athletic or core academics. The one constant that I've seen in children's lives is the need for a creative outlet, and in my children's case, that has been music. It has amazed me what Tech High has been able to accomplish despite the lack of facilities, let alone proper facilities. I have no doubt that they would be able to reach new heights given an appropriate amount of purpose-built space. It is understandable that the district has competing priorities and that health and safety projects must come first. A performing arts space at Tech High falls into this category. The space utilized by the music program lacks proper storage, space to circulate, and as I have said before, is on the ragged edge of a square footage for occupancy. That occupancy is based on a lecture space, not a programmatic one. Beyond the issue of injuries due to lack of circulation space, their current space would be difficult, if not impossible, to secure during a critical situation, such as an active shooter. One of the other prioritization criteria is equity. In the previous facilities meeting, some of the other districts' construction projects would be to build auxiliary or redundant spaces at another site. It seems quite inequitable to build auxiliary spaces at another site when that site already has existing facilities, not scheduled for decommissioning. Tech High is struggling to conduct their performing arts programs in a cafeteria. Giving Tech High a performing arts building would allow its fledgling arts programs to be more successful. Proper facilities would better allow students to live up to their potential. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Kim Gomez.
Hi there. I am a parent. I have a Tech High student who just finished his freshman year, so going into sophomore year. And this is his first experience with instrumental music. And he's had a great experience. It's been amazing in this very tight space. And so just imagining, I grew up playing music, and we always had ample space for a band room and just the community that's established with that space and the place even just to hang out and be able to practice and be able to have that time with the other band students, I think just creates more of a community, but what's been accomplished in the small space is amazing. So I'm excited to see and hopeful for what could be in an actual dedicated space for music, because I feel like that is something, and I know you know it's difficult to keep these, the arts and the music, performing arts and those things which are so important for the development of kids. And just to be able to see that the amount, my son went from playing nothing to playing in an orchestra. And so I can't wait to see what could come with even more resources and a safe space, and just hearing some of, I haven't been in there during class, but I can imagine seeing what it is, what it could be. So thank you for your consideration for that. I think that's going to be a really valuable space for the students to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right. Miss Eggering, Jenna, it's your turn.
Okay, this will be a little bit longer. Type mine out. Okay, hi everybody. So my name is Jenna Eggering, and I am the Tech High Band Director and one of the Vapatosas helping to implement Prop 28 in the district. Some of you saw earlier, please excuse my casual look. I'm in the middle of working at Cazadera Music Camp, drove out here, driving back right after this. I actually have a few of my students who are employees that will be employees this summer up here too. So I'm here today to advocate for my students in getting them a proper educational facility. Some of you are aware we currently run our program off an elementary size stage, a very inadequate and unsafe space for this size of a program. I understand that when Tech High was relocated to its current campus, a band program was an afterthought, and that's okay. I'm glad it was a thought at all. What I don't think anyone expected was for it to grow the way it did. Sorry, you guys hired me. I'm doing my job. But in the past 5 years, we've grown from 18 to 45 students, which is 13% of our school. You can't find that. That's unmatched in the rest of our county for that population-wise. I'm proud of the work these kids have done to compete at CMEA and come away with superiors and excellence in their ratings. Some have attended county honor bands, regional honor bands, and 2 have even attended all-state, beating out hundreds of other auditions in the entire state of California. The music program at Tech has grown to also include an instrumental music course for beginners. This year's having 31 students. So music is alive and well at Tech High, and the size of our program rivals others in the county. The only difference between us and them is that we don't have a band room, or practice rooms, or proper storage, or a stage that fits us, or even a window. A window would be nice. Here it's beneficial to like learning and social emotional well-being. Like to see the outside. And so I did some research. According to Title V of the California Code of Regulations, you can go down the articles and sections, but it says stage and platform may have a dividing wall to be used for instructional purposes, but it's not intended as a classroom. And while Tech High was renovated and not new from the ground up, the current code indicates that it is not intended to be a classroom space. According to the Wenger Corporation, the leader in music equipment across this country, a band rehearsal space for 60 to 75 students should be 2,500 square feet. Currently at Tech High, our stage is about 20 feet to 35 feet, so about 600 to 700 square feet compared to the 2,000 it should be. We have had instruments break due to lack of room to maneuver around them when being assembled and put away. We have had students and myself trip and fall because there isn't room to walk between chairs, stands, instruments, backpacks, and people. I've had the pleasure of catching a few students by the collar to prevent them from completely falling down. My reflexes are getting quicker with this though. Since we don't fit on the stage as a full band, when we rehearse together as a whole group, we have 2 periods of band. I need students to come help move equipment down to the gym floor and then back up afterwards. The more we move and lift instruments that cost thousands of dollars, the more we risk breaking them and potential injury to our students. When there's large group testing, like in the fall for PSATs and SATs, we have to cancel class entirely because it takes place in the gym. No other class has to cancel their learning to accommodate anything. We have an amazing drama program that can't rehearse on an actual stage. We also break down our classroom in the spring for drama performances so they can have the pleasure of performing in their own house. When there's a rally or dance, we have to break down our classroom during other class times, and spend either lunchtime or instructional time reassembling our learning space. More learning time is lost. Guest speakers can't have a nice backdrop or be on stage. We keep the fire curtains closed and they stand on the floor because our classroom is on stage. PE has become a new percussion section as that happens on the gym floor during our music classes. Clinicians who work with students have to awkwardly maneuver around them when demonstrating new ideas. Sometimes we can't even do the exercises they physically want us to do because we just don't have the space. More learning has been lost. I can no longer purchase necessary percussion instruments because we just don't have the room to store them, which means we aren't hitting all of our educational standards. There are instruments I can't teach them to play. We're not honoring the composer's intended musical ideas. We're dropping parts entirely, sometimes all due to space. More learning, yet again, lost. The room is never fully secure because of those curtains. They don't move on their own. We have to physically move them back and forth. We are grateful to Josh Savage and his team for putting in some shelving and mounting our television to help get us some more space this year. So thank you, Josh, to you and your team. And I want to make sure that we're not complaining about having to help do these things for our school. We're a team, we're a family, and we do these things. We help support one another. But basically, this district is doing a huge disservice to these students by not offering them what they deserve and what they need, what every high school program in this county has, and what other secondary programs in this district have. We're not asking for a new room, a better room, or another room. We're asking for an actual band room. We don't have one. It's a personal safety concern. It's an equipment safety and cost concern. It's an educational concern. It's probably a fire marshal concern, but let's hope they don't come by during class. We at Tech support the district's vision to introduce TK into every elementary site. The littles are our future, and childcare costs are through the roof for my colleagues as well too, so please let's get them into school. Also, we support the replacement of the portables that are well past their expiration date at 20 years. We're just hoping that you can also help prioritize the safety and needs of this program too. I just want to thank my students and the parents that have come out tonight during summer break to be here. The school is full of heart and spirit. So thank you, everybody. And to the board, I mean, thank you for being here, for your time and consideration. We know the facilities master plan is coming up, and that's why, you know, at one of the last meetings in May, I mean, we had 12 people there. Like, you can see that these kids care about this, and 3 of them are seniors. They already graduated. They're not going to benefit from this, but they're still here. So just hoping that as the plan comes along, we can think about this a little bit too. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's okay. All right. Next, we have up presentations. So we have the QKA presentation on facilities.
Long walk up to the front. Thank you all for having us here. So I'm Aaron Jobson, for those of you who remember, Juliana Sarando, and we will be presenting the facilities master plan, which is very relevant to our previous comments. So today is really to present an update of what we've been working on and kind of and the first draft of the final plan. So our agenda today is to talk a little bit about the process and the work that we've done over the last couple of months since the last time we were here. And then provide kind of a little bit of a summary of the kind of major facilities needs and trends we saw across the district, and the impact that making some of those improvements would have. And then Juliana will walk through a couple of the preliminary draft sections for the high school, Rancho Cotati High School, and Monte Vista Elementary School as just examples of the content and kind of what that looks like. And then we'll discuss a couple of key pieces that we'd like to get your kind of input and thoughts about as we finish things up, and then talk about the next steps and where we go from here. So overall process update, we've completed the second site committee meetings at each school site, reviewing those preliminary plans, providing hearing input on the proposed projects, getting a lot of feedback on that, a lot of input from that. These guys did a great job showing up to that meeting too, so we were able to get a lot of input from students and from parents at Tech High, but also at many of the other and all of the other sites as well. And part of that was prioritizing which projects or getting their input on which projects would be most important and have the biggest impact. We also had 2 community meetings where we also provided an overview of the process of all the work that's been done to date, the things that we've thought about as we did this planning, and then reviewed the preliminary plans for each campus. We kind of divided the district into 2 parts geographically, and presented the schools in those areas, and then also presented the both high schools at both meetings as well. And that also included gathering some feedback through live polling, which you can kind of see in the top right corner there, around for each school which proposed improvements would have the most impact. We actually used a feature that allowed folks they have 100 points and they can distribute it across these kind of 6 to 8 major projects at each campus, which is kind of how it works for all of us because we don't have enough money to fund everything. We have a limited amount of money and we can only spend it on the things that are most important. So kind of having that exercise of deciding which things are most important and most impactful. And then currently we're working on the cost estimating. We're expecting those numbers back at the end of the month. And then we'll be incorporating those into the documents and identifying a cost for each project and doing some overall kind of executive summary work and summarizing the needs and the costs across the district as well. So that's kind of one of the things we're working on right now, and that will get us to the final document to present to all of you for approval. So one of the things that we start each meeting with, we've talked about the kind of slide, the picture on the right there, used this as a slide with you all a couple of times, but also each of the site committee meetings is kind of why are we doing this? Why is facilities planning important? And the first one there is that the quality of educational facilities matters to education. I think you all articulated one piece of that and why that's important for your music program. But we wanted to take a few minutes today to kind of drill into that a little bit more and talk about some of the research and some of the science behind what those impacts are and how we can design facilities to maximize those. So the kind of some broad things of the quality of our environment, different aspects of the space impact your brain function. They also reduce stress, a lot of that, right? If you're too hot, if you're too cold, your body is stressed. It works the same way as if you're stressed for some other reason, and you know, you go into more fight or flight mode. You're not able to understand and to think about things in the same way. It also, you know, we can also do things with the facilities that reduce disease transmission, right? Ventilation, a lot of things that came to the forefront during COVID have always been issues that we've tried to address in facilities. Both of those things can impact attendance, which has a huge impact on the amount of learning that happens. And then they also can have an impact on social and emotional well-being as well, and just how safe people feel, how comfortable they feel, how ready to learn they feel. So one of the pieces of research that we cite a lot is actually a study that was done, I think about 8 to 10 years ago now in the UK, where you can see there they looked at classrooms at a bunch of different schools, at 53 different classrooms at a number of different schools of all kinds of different environments within the UK. Looked at that affected over 3,700 students. And one of the things they found is they tried to quantify like how much of the difference between the highest performing schools, the highest performing students, and the lowest performing students can we attribute to the quality of the environment. So if you read the peer-reviewed journal, there's 2 pages on the statistical analysis and how they do that and isolate the factors, which is way above my pay grade, but is part of that analysis to figure out how do we tease out that impact. And it turns out that they found that if you look at that difference in achievement, you can attribute 16% of that just to the quality of the classroom environments that those students are in, which is a pretty significant number. And it has a pretty significant impact. And obviously there are a whole bunch of other factors that go into that, but the facilities is one that we actually do have a lot of control over, and that you have a lot of control over as a school district, and can make a big impact on the actual learning that happens within those spaces. And they had some recommendations. Is they actually published a great report that goes through kind of each of these and provides recommendations for designers and facilities planners, but also for teachers about how to implement this even within how they use the space. So thinking about the quality of the light, the temperature, the air quality, but also things like flexibility and the ownership that students have of their own environment. The visual complexity of the space and the color of the space have an impact too, in all of these different ways. So those are things that we look at as we look at your facilities and all school facilities, and as we design new facilities. One of the things I like to reference too is the World Bank actually published this report in 2019, which is kind of a summary of a wide range of research, including the report I referenced before. But it's a great resource because it looks at things from these 5 different sections of kind of access to educational infrastructure, safe and healthy buildings, baseline conditions for learning, links between school design and pedagogy and community, and then process of planning and implementation, and how kind of best practices around all of these, but also what the impact of those is on the actual learning that happens. And kind of through this, some of the things that we can see as proposed improvements that can have a high impact to these different factors. Upgrading the HVAC systems improves comfort, improves ventilation, improves CO2 levels, and kind of reduces disease transmission, all of those things. That can have a big impact. Improving safety and security, we've talked a lot about that with you all, but also in the individual meetings. That can have a big impact. I think improving daylighting, improving the connection to the outdoors, having that visual connection for students to have something nice to look at outdoors, that kind of break of focus in a way, kind of changing that pace actually helps overall with cognition and with learning. Outdoor learning and play environments are really helpful too. Those have a big impact on, again, kind of providing a different type of learning space, but also just providing that space for kids to go between classes and release some of that energy, right? And have fun and have that be a part of their social emotional health too. And then kind of creating opportunities for student and community ownership of schools is something we're always looking for, and something a lot of your schools do really well already, so that students feel like they belong, that communities feel like they have a sense of ownership over that school. And then, one of the big ones you look for too is replacing outdated portable classrooms with new high performance classrooms, because a lot of those physical factors, especially lights and ventilation, things like that, portable classrooms are not high performance, let's say. They don't score very well on those things, and they don't provide the same level. They don't really have a lot of connection to the outside. They don't have good daylighting. The ventilation is often not great. So those are kind of areas, the kind of low-hanging fruit that we really want to focus on. So kind of with all of that, we kind of looking over all the work we've done with you over the past 6 months or so, I think tried to identify kind of like what are the top 5 kind of biggest trends that we see as far as facilities needs across the district as a whole. Every school has individual things, as you all articulated, for your program and for Tech High that are very specific, but there are a lot of broad trends that we saw too, and we wanted to talk about those a little bit. So one is transitional kindergarten. We've added a new grade to our schools, and that comes with a lot of specialized needs and just more students. So that's 325 plus new TK students between 2020 and 2025. And that means 20 additional classrooms for transitional kindergarten students. And those have special requirements. We're supporting 4-year-olds, and they need different kinds of facilities for the kinds of equipment and manipulatives and things they need, and restrooms and support for the teachers and things like that too. And you don't have a lot of classrooms on your campuses that meet those guidelines and standards right now. And then the same goes with outdoor spaces too, and having safe, protected outdoor play spaces that are dedicated to TK and kinder, or at least kind of younger grade students. And then connection for pickup and drop off and kind of how that works for smaller kids too is a little bit different. We want to make sure we support that and make sure that's safe. And that's really an issue that we saw across all of your elementaries and K-8s, that there's a real need for TK facilities. And one of them is mentioned earlier, but replacing the portable classrooms. You have 79 portable classrooms across the campus, I think is the right count. And most are either leased or past the end of their useful life and really need to be replaced. And we want to recommend that we replace them with new permanent classrooms. And one of the things that we've been doing too is doing a careful capacity analysis across the district to make sure that we're not replacing facilities we don't need, that we're planning to right-size your schools to match the projected enrollment, which in your case is going up steadily, if not rapidly, but steadily. And so we want to make sure that we're replacing those classrooms and building in capacity for that growth. The portable classrooms are not distributed equally across the district either. You can see a list there of kind of the schools that have the largest number of those portable classrooms, but that's something that we plan for across the district, is replacing all of those portables to the extent they're needed to meet the projected enrollment. And one of the things we talked about as well is kind of wellness center spaces. Many student support services, your counselors, your psychologists, your reading specialists, things like that. Our programs are services that have been added since the schools were designed, and often are in whatever space made sense for that, whether that was creating some offices in a portable classroom or using a closet or what used to be a conference room or things like that. And one of the things we talked about a lot at every level is finding ways to consolidate those and design spaces that are purpose-built for them, so that they provide the space they need. They also can do that in an efficient way. Oftentimes we can take things that you may only have, 2 speech therapists using a portable classroom. That's 1,000 square feet. That's more space than they actually need if it was designed to actually meet those needs. So being able to do that in an efficient and effective way, but also provide space that meets the needs of those services, puts them in one place so they can work together better, and so it's easier for students and families to access them too. So that's something that we looked at all across the district. We also talked about all access restrooms kind of related to that, sometimes part of those wellness centers, sometimes not. So that's creating restrooms that are a little bit more flexible and have single kind of toilet rooms for individual toilets and open shared sink areas. So both from an equity and a supervision and safety perspective, that was something that resonated with a lot of the school site folks that we talked about, especially at the middle school and high school level. And then safety and security. So we talked before about implementing kind of the crime prevention through environmental design kind of prototype for how we address that, and looking at access control and passive supervision and ownership of your school sites too. And every school has a little bit different situation with that. Every school has a little bit different context with their neighborhood, and there's no perfect approach to anything. So it's a conversation we had to each school site. In some cases, it's about relocating the office to more the front of the school so we can control that. In some cases, it's providing some additional fencing between buildings, trying to use the buildings as a perimeter as much as possible, so that we can supervise who's coming and going from facilities, but we're still creating a welcoming environment. It's still a place that we still want to welcome people onto the campus. We'd just like to make sure that they're checked in when they come on during school hours. So that's something that is a need across the district, and something that we talked about quite a bit as well. And then last but not least, there are a lot of long-term maintenance issues that need to be addressed too, that are really beyond the capability of the district to fund or manage with maintenance and operations staff and funding. And this is typical of all schools in California, that those needs outstrip the ability for you to kind of fund regular maintenance or deferred maintenance through your general fund. So there's a whole bunch of different examples of that, and your schools are in better shape than many, and have done a pretty good job keeping track of that. But there are some longer term things like HVAC systems, like roofing, playground equipment, things like that, parking and drop off, paving services, things like that that are timed to have a bigger, more extensive repair or replacement than can really be funded through your maintenance and operations kind of regular process. So that's the kind of overview, big picture. So we're going to dive into kind of walking through the documents for Monte Vista and Rancho Cotati as an example. But before we do that, any questions about that first part from the board?
I have. So is the recommendation then that we would replace all the portables and just not use portables at all anymore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, yes.
So
and
is
I think
there-
you want to be careful about that, because we don't, I think the advantage of portables is they are inexpensive and relatively quick.
Right.
But they are intended to be temporary and really appropriate as a temporary facility. That's not often what has happened in the past. And so I think we also want to be very careful about not building a bunch more classrooms than you're going to need. And there may be a point at some point in the future where you need to add additional portable classrooms because enrollment grows, and that's fine. I mean, they can be a useful tool. But I think where we can, we want, and where they need to be replaced anyways, we know we're going to continue to need that space, we want to do that with facilities that are not only going to provide a better environment, but also last more than 20 years. They're going to last 50, 100 years if they're maintained well. So it's a long-term investment too.
Has it been, for some reason in my mind, when Andrew was in elementary school, so a long time ago, unfortunately, very sad. Anyway, I thought like portables were like the new up and coming, like this is the future of schools, is it's going to be these portables because they can be manipulated and moved. And now I'm hearing like maybe, so is it a trend that's changed, or was it just kind of?
So there's a
maybe it was
couple
some-
of things. There used to actually be a state requirement, like when Lawrence Jones, for instance, was built, you had to build a certain percentage of your, if you wanted to qualify for state funding that April and Jamie will talk about. Wherever you guys went, you're over there now. In a little bit, you needed to provide a certain percentage as relocatable, because it was the idea that then you could move them around to different places where the students were. But the reality is that no one ever did that.
Okay.
Right? Like you don't really move them around like that. It's not quite as simple as it sounds. And so they ended up kind of just being in place and not being as long-term or durable facilities. And I think the other piece too is that we've learned a lot about the impact of school facilities on learning. So I think 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was more of an attitude that like, it doesn't really matter, just build a box and put the kids in it, and then whatever that looks like, there's not a lot of connection there. But there's been a lot more research and a lot more understanding that there actually is a big impact on what those facilities are like and the quality of those facilities. But that is a relatively, there's been a lot of change of that just in the last 10 years, let alone, 20, 30 years.
Okay. So there's no California requirement anymore that we have to have these portables and away we go.
There's
okay. Well, thank you to the state for that lovely thing that we now have to get rid of.
not.
So.
We live and learn, right?
Other questions about the first half? All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, and good evening, board members. So I'm going to take you through a couple of our examples that will be provided in the facilities document come August for approval. Tonight we're going to go over Rancho Cotati High School's section as well as Monte Vista Elementary. Begin with Rancho Cotati High School. We'll provide on a cover sheet for each section, similar to this, you'll see is basic school data of the current year of established site area, its current conditions, considering its enrollment, its capacity, looking at the current facilities, the permanent classrooms, as well as the portable classrooms for each of the schools, and then a summary of what will be proposed within the section of the projected enrollment in the 29-30 school year, the planned classrooms at that point, as well as the planned student capacity. Following, we'll provide a summary and some additional information with estimated costs that our team will be working on, as Aaron mentioned, in the next couple of weeks. We'll be providing information as far as dollar amounts to each one of these projects and categorizing them based on the impact they will have for the school and its program, and identifying the facility major needs for each of those campuses. We'll provide an aerial view, so in a case like this for Rancho Cotati High School, for site context of seeing how the campus looks from above at the bird's eye view, and that's how we look at the facilities planning at the 20,000 foot level. We will go into detail with each individual projects, but when we discuss with the school site committees, we looked at their current facilities at that level to identify where programs are needed and at facilities that need improvement, less about how many outlets are in each of the classrooms or what kind of storage cabinet or what kind of carpet we're looking at. That's a little bit more down the line with regards to design and process. We are talking about the 20,000 foot level though at the campus from this level here. At each of the school site committees at the beginning in the spring, we provided the existing conditions of the site, and this is the first map that we showed the campus. This identifies each of the facilities on the campus labeled as such, and here at Rancho Cotati, we've identified where all the buildings and each of the classroom wings are. Our team, along with the facilities maintenance team, walked the campuses in December and did an assessment of their current conditions. So these next few slides will break down each individual part of those facilities, looking at the site in this case here on this slide, identifying the current conditions following code compliance, educational appropriateness, technology infrastructure, building finished materials, building systems, lighting and electrical systems, environmental quality, and safety and security. Providing that little bar chart right there to the right, and identifying each of those conditions as we see it based on our recommendation, our expertise, along with the facilities and Josh Savage's and his team. Identifying challenges for each of these areas, and then also opportunities that we hear based on from we heard from the school site committees. So in this case, we have existing condition summaries of the site. We'll provide a similar chart and identification for each of the classroom wings, the gymnasium, the library. And then we will provide a proposed plan of facilities. You'll see here it's color-coded as well for identifying new construction as well as levels of modernization for each of these classroom wings or facility needs and any other miscellaneous projects throughout the campus. From this aerial view, we'll provide a little bit more in-depth description of what each of these improvements and proposed projects would entail. Also, as Aaron will be talking about in a moment, identifying the impacts these projects will have on those categories we mentioned earlier about based on the assessment. But we will go through each individual project listed in that facilities plan overhead with a dollar amount estimated, the impact it'll have, and then again, identifying more specifically what's entailed within each one of those projects. So for instance, a heavier modernization of the N wing here at Rancho Cotati High School, or modernization of the existing gym and locker room space and how that we reconfigured, modernization of the library, the K building, looking at a general modernization of all the remaining classroom wings that are all in similar conditions, new projects, new construction throughout the campus, and any other sport or athletic facilities as well here at Rancho Cotati High School. Similarly, for Monte Vista Elementary, we'll identify again its basic information, the current conditions, the enrollment, the current classroom configurations and their type, whether they be a permanent classroom or portable, and provide the numbers that we project in the 29-30 school year for enrollment, as well as planned classrooms and any capacity increase or growth there. Again, identifying the summary for each of the campuses. So similar to here, identifying new TKK buildings, special day classrooms, modernizing the existing transitional kindergarten building, new classroom buildings, covered eating areas, and reconfiguration and heavier modernization of other facilities on the campus. So a basic summary for each of the sections. Again, an aerial view for the campus for site context. And then an existing site conditions with each of the facilities identified and labeled. Again, this was shared with the campus's school site committee. And then again, with our team moving forward, And next slide. Doing an assessment of each of the existing conditions of each of the areas on the facilities of the campus. Again, starting with the site, moving through the administration office and the library, classroom wings, multi-use ring, and then presenting the facilities plan that we along with the site community have developed with any new construction or identifying projects for each of the campuses, in this case for Monte Vista Elementary. And then a breakdown of each one of those projects again, with an estimated dollar amount located here on the top, and identifying each individual project with a little bit more description as what that entails, and its impact it will have for the school site and its programs for each one of these. Looking at campus-wide safety and security, new classroom buildings, specialty classroom buildings for music program or PE Flex, STEAM labs, SDC classroom buildings, modernization, reconfiguration projects as well, existing like the library, for instance, here at Monte Vista, reconfiguration of the existing TK building, and heavier modernization of their multi-use room, and any site projects dedicated with site structures for covered eating areas or outdoor learning opportunities. Aaron's going to come back and discuss about what we mean by indicators of quality and what these projects will have as far as the impact they have to their programs at each of these sites.
Okay. So as we talked about earlier today and many other times, we know that we're going to identify more need than you're going to have funding from any one source to complete. So one of the things that we try to do to help you with that is help quantify the impact educationally that each improvement will have, that each of those proposed projects that Juliana walked through. How do we identify in some way what the value of that is, what the impact it's going to have on education? And so we developed this methodology that we call indicators of quality to do that. So we identified 6 different categories, and we rate each, we give every project a 1 to 10 score in each of those categories. And then we also weight them because they're not all equally important. And the weighting that you see here is what we talked about with the executive committee. So our team and the cabinet about what made sense for Cotati Roanoke Park based on what we've seen, based on what we've heard from the community in all the different ways about what was most important, what was going to be most impactful. And then the score gets multiplied by the weighting and it adds up to a total. And it adds up to a total of 120 points. There's a large part of me that really wants to make it add up to 100, but it just doesn't quite work that way. So we're accepting that it's out of 120. And so you can see here we've put the highest weight on educational programs, on learning environment quality, also a very high weight on maintenance and operations and safety and security. And then we're looking at code compliance and community and support. It's not that those aren't important, it's that maybe the need isn't quite as high there. Your buildings don't have a lot of issues with code compliance. There are small issues, but not significant issues. Those aren't huge problems. So that's part of why those things aren't weighted as important. It's not that that's not as important, it's just that it's not as big of an issue. So the way that we use this is, one, we check in with the executive committee like we talked about, but we also want to check in with you about the weighting. That's really the part where we can kind of make adjustments to that to reflect the specific needs and priorities here at Cotati Roanoke Park. And then we will take that, and then our team, based on everything we've heard and everything we've seen on your facilities, will score each project. And then that'll be part of what you see. So on each project, you can see there's a little box there that has the scores for each level, and then the total, and then they'll also get sorted. We go all the way back to the beginning. We kind of put those into kind of 4 buckets of low, medium, high, highest need, and then we'll quantify that for each school as well, and then we can aggregate that across the district as well. And so that's kind of how we report out data to understand kind of what that need is, and the gray box becomes a bar chart of those 4 different levels, so you can pretty quickly, easily see kind of what the need level is at each school and how that varies by school and what that looks like. So that's kind of how we use that information, but wanted to check in with, if I can get back to the right page, with you all and see if you had any thoughts or comments on that approach and on that weighting specifically.
Yeah, go ahead, Shirley. Thank you for your presentation. On
in Monte Vista, I saw that it was scored low on safety and security, but as I remember, Monte Vista has a lot of fencing all the way around it, so I'm wondering why it scored so low. And is fencing a big deal that contributes to safety? And
It's definitely part of it. I don't know if you remember the specifics.
see
of
that safety and security is pretty low there.
One aspect of safety and security that we discuss with each one of the school site committees isn't necessarily just about perimeter fencing, but it's also about the safety and security within the classroom buildings, having visibility to the rest of the grounds, having to be able to supervise the courtyard spaces, visibility from inside the classroom, as well as going in from inside and outside the classroom of what any supervision issues that can arise from there. There's limited windows, visibility for teachers to supervise during those times. There's little pockets, particularly for Monte Vista, pockets of where there's little visibility. So in that regard, that's how we look at safety and security, not just particularly with perimeter fencing, but other aspects of how supervision, monitoring, well-being as well is taken into account.
Trustee Nelson or Trustee Martin, do you guys? Are you going? Oh, thank you. I think they're rated appropriately, and thank you for explaining why code compliance is rated the leadest. I appreciate that one. I think, based with our public comments tonight and just talking to people in the community, one of the things is I would maybe say like supporting current educational programs, because I think that we have needs in our district for current programs that probably most of the schools that don't have the probably best facilities for that type of band being a very obvious one, but there's other ones too. So I would weight our current educational programs probably higher than future educational programs. It would be nice to have, kind of like that, nice to have, want to have, and need to have. We have a need right now for things that are currently on our campus.
Right.
If we built other things, then we could offer stuff. But my immediate need is like, what are we offering now so that the students are getting the education and the teachers have the space they need to conduct class? So that would be just my thing of educational programs is current ones versus future ones.
And that makes sense. And we can, in the final document, there'll be a little paragraph describing what each one of these means, so we can make sure that's kind of reflected in that description of the first one, educational program as well.
Actually, Michelle, I do have a question. So obviously looking in this one, I see blank dollar amounts and then blank X out of X.
Yep.
What's the timeline or plan for getting like the details on that?
So that is a great segue into kind of our next steps, which, so we're working on that now. Okay. We'll have the final draft of the document that'll include all the cost numbers and all the indicator quality ratings and the executive summary kind of mid to late July is the timeline. And one of the things we wanted to talk to you about today is how you want to go forward with that as far as reviewing. So we could bring it back to the board in August. And we can bring it back for approval, or we can bring it back for a review and bring it back for approval at a later date, at a future. That's really up to you all on how you want to see that. But we'll have that document kind of mid to late July, and then we can distribute it for your review then.
So what does approval mean? Like, yes, go ahead and start building these things, or yes, look into it more? Because I would think that you guys would put this all together, and then it would go to Josh and the facilities committee, and then the facilities committee would tell us, this is what we want to do. But I defer to Josh or you, or
well,
I guess what are we approving?
The way that I see it is right now everything looks equal, right? X out of X. So a field is going to cost as much as a shade area. So
and that's just because it's a draft.
That's just the
correct, but there's going to have to be some prioritization of what we can afford to go
and so
with.
There's a piece of the process that when you have, right now you don't really have any facilities funding much to speak of to spend, right? But if you had some in the future, if there was a bond pass or something like that, then we would do an implementation plan, which is sort of, here's this big pool of projects we've identified from the master plan, and then we pull out what are the highest priority items right now to fund to match the amount of money that we have. But we don't really do that until there's a need to do that, right? So that would be, I think, a little bit of what you're asking and how we'd get to, okay, what projects are we going forward with? So typically, I think to answer your question, sort of what does approval mean? It's really just the board saying, we reviewed and approved this document as a facilities master plan, as a guideline for future decision making. You're not approving proceeding with any projects. You're not approving spending any money. There will be specific approvals for any contracts around any of that kind of stuff in the future, as you're used to seeing in past facilities projects.
And because Trustee Brown's not here, I feel like I have the responsibility to ask this. Will this report not only include how much it's going to cost to do this, but what are the ongoing maintenance costs? So like the tag building, it costs one thing to build it, and then it costs something else to maintain the lights and the HVAC and the different, our utilities go up as we build more and more things. So is that part of this?
It is not, no.
Okay.
It's a good question, but that would be a whole other
That's
kind of analysis.
Great. Any other questions or? All right. Well, we appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing the documents.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can send them out to us in July. I don't think we have to wait for a board meeting to send them out just to see them. We can't talk about it, but.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. How would you like to proceed? Would you like the document sent to you? Do you want another presentation on August 6th with the draft, and then on opportunity to think about it and then come back and approve it or not approve it? What does the board?
I think public visibility for the actual numbers is going to be just as good as us being able to review and look at them in depth. But
So like an August 6th presentation of a draft, and then we can come back for approval or not at another time?
Yeah. I think
Would that be, we have 2 meetings in August?
I think that would work.
Would that work? An August 6th presentation and a August 20th agenda item?
Yeah.
Okay.
That
Is
makes
that what
sense.
you need?
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
That makes perfect sense. So on the 6th presentation, we can have some sort of aggregate data across the district and talk about kind of what we're seeing, and then include the final document in that. And then you can get us any comments in between then, and we can incorporate them for the 20th.
Okay.
There's one other piece that we just want to talk about, which I'll just touch on briefly because it's a good segue into the next presentation, which is just, we've talked about in a lot of the meetings that there are the kind of the 3 main sources of funding for school facilities in California, which there's a little bit of developer fees. The local bond funding is the major piece of funding, and then there is state bond funding, which can be a matching grant program that April and Jamie are much more qualified to talk about. So I'll let them do that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next, we have up King Consulting presentation.
We have 2 representatives, Jamie King-Eisman and April Thompson, who will present, who will have a presentation around eligibility for state.
Good evening, Board President, Trustees, Superintendent. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jamie King-Eisman. I'm the president from King Consulting. This is April Thompson. She's a senior funding associate. We have been providing demographic services for a couple years, and we're happy to be here tonight to present your state funding opportunities through the State School Facility Program. I'm going to share a little bit of information just to introduce ourselves about who we are, what we do, and then I'll hand it over to April to talk a little bit about we call ourselves the Good News Girls, some really good information we have for you about your state funding opportunities. So we're a small firm located in Sacramento. We specialize primarily in 2 areas. One are your state funding opportunities, not only through the State School Facility Program, which we're here to talk to you about tonight, but also any kind of federal grant funds that are coming out of the federal government, Homeland Security, that type of thing, and then also different state grants, like there's a Green Schoolyards grant through CAL FIRE right now. So we specialize in anything related to funding for facilities. We also specialize in demographics, projecting enrollments, because there's a direct correlation between where your enrollments are headed and the types and sizes of facilities that you need. So there's only a few places that you get funding for facilities as a school district, as you know. Locally, you have your LCFF, you have developer fees that you collect if you pass any kind of general obligation bonds or parcel taxes, if you have any kind of joint use agreements with any community groups or the city, say, perchance. There's also certificates of participation, which are loans that you take out of your general fund, At the state level, there is the State School Facility Program, which we're here to talk to you about tonight. You have participated in that program historically, and we're going to talk quite a bit about it tonight. There's also the California Energy Commission, CEC, has a program called CalShape for HVAC and plumbing, and that's one of April's area of specialty. And then there's also some federal funding available for some things like drinking water, underground storage tank, but we also follow really closely all the legislation, which is why we're based in Sacramento at the state level and at the federal level. So money coming out of the federal government for school infrastructure, that sort of thing, any kind of COPS funding for safety and security, we follow all that legislation. So not a lot of places where you get funding, but we specialize in all of them. So I will hand it over to April really quickly to talk to you a little bit about the State School Facility Program. I don't know how familiar you are with it. It is administered by the Office of Public School Construction, and their body of oversight is the State Allocation Board made up of state legislators, the California Department of Education, California Department of Finance, et cetera. Get away, April.
So that's a little bit about the State School Facility Program. It's funded by, in addition to what Jamie said, it's funded by statewide school facility bonds. And it's been in effect since about 1998. And it's really the primary resource for state funding for school district facilities. So why is it so complicated? There are multiple different public agencies that will review your projects and need to provide approvals in order for you to apply for state funding. There's the Division of State Architect, the California Department of Education, the California Geological Society, things like that. Depending on the scope of the project, there are all these different agencies that need a piece of that pie. Which has a tendency to extend those project timelines. Each one of these different agencies has their own workload timeline, and that is added into the overall timeline for your projects. There are also frequent regulatory changes, and we're always watching that, but each one of these different entities has changes in their regulations fairly frequently. Also, because these are public works and you are a school district, these are school facility projects, they're so highly regulated. Your school facility buildings are the second most safest in the state, second only to hospitals. Which means that you have higher labor costs, higher regulations that you need to meet for labor, higher materials also in quality that you're required to use. You, as Jamie mentioned, you have participated in the statewide school facility program before. The district has received funding for new construction, for modernization, as well as career tech education. And I'm going to hand it back over to Jamie to go into a little bit more specific about the programs.
Really quickly before we move on to modernization, you can think of the State School Facility Program kind of like an umbrella, and underneath that umbrella, there's all these different funding mechanisms, and each one of them is its own unique program. So we're going to talk a lot tonight about modernization and new construction. Those two programs, you have eligibility in those programs, and that can be calculated on an annual basis. And it's driven a lot by your enrollments and the age of your facilities. Other programs at the state level, like minimum essential facilities for things like undersized multipurpose rooms, undersized gyms, libraries, admin areas, those are more project specific. And so your eligibility in those different programs, like minimum essential facilities or career tech ed, if you had a special program for that, or even the pre-K, TK, full day kinder program, those are really project specific programs that we run your eligibility for when you have a project that you want to apply for. So to talk about modernization, the modernization program is reimbursable all the way back to 1998, the beginning of the program. Every state program under the SFP requires that you have a district match. So the modernization program is a 60-40 split. So depending on the cost of the project, the state provides 60% of that cost. You provide the other 40%. And for modernization, you can look at it this way. Whatever you're eligible up to, consider the modernization grant at 60% your hard construction costs. So if you're doing an HVAC project for $1 million of hard construction costs, and you have the eligibility, the state would cover those hard construction costs. Everything else you pay for, your soft costs, people like Aaron, people like me, your engineers, anything that's not hammer and nails, those are your soft costs, the state wants you to pay that. And that's true in the new construction and all the other programs as well. Your local funds that you match the eligibility with can be developer fees, they can be GeoBond funds, any of those kind of local sources that we mentioned earlier. You just can't match SFP programs with other SFP money. The funding is based for modernization on students that are housed in portable facilities that are over 20 years old, or students that are housed in permanent facilities that are over 25 years old. Your modernization eligibility, you have to kind of think of it as like a bank account that you have at the state. So the numbers we're going to show you tonight is like basically your bank account, and it's site specific. So you can only take those dollars that are generated at a site and spend them at that site, right? Improving those facilities that are older. That being said, in order to take a withdrawal from your modernization bank, you need to have a set of Division of State Architect approved plans and California Department of Ed approval in order to submit an application, and we'll talk a little bit about the timeline later. Sure.
When you're defining projects, you just said that I'm hoping this is what I'm understanding, that a project is an architect approved plan.
DSA, Division of State Architects, so DSA approved plans, or your project doesn't have to be, if it's exempt from DSA approval, so some projects are exempt, like Aaron could speak to this more clearly. There's a list called the IRA 22, and it's projects that don't require the Division of State Architect take your plans in and hold on to them for 6 to 9 months and then approve them. Like for roof replacement, some of those are exempt. I'm trying to think of other exempt projects we've had. Lighting, painting. Just depends on, some projects need approval or not. So approval or exemption.
So a project, it sounds like it has to be mapped out either through DSA or exempt from DSA, rather than a report that we would get, say, from KQA to build, I don't know, a new practice field. That isn't going to be a project. That's
right. You
okay.
need to have a project that you've at least gone through the design process on and have gotten approved through the Division of State Architect or exempted. You need an architectural set of drawings in order to get those approvals.
Okay.
But we take QKA's approval and they submit it to the state, and it's not like the state's architect is making it for us.
Right.
Well,
They're
I'm not
basically
sure about
giving
the
us-
report if they're going to be giving us architectural plans for that.
Sorry. So the way that it works is, so for a funding application,
that's the first step.
Yeah, for a funding application, first we look at, does the site have eligibility? And if the answer is yes, then it's, do you have projects there that we can get you reimbursed for? Maybe you've already done a project there a few years ago and you've already gone through Division of State Architect and they've already given you their stamp of approval, and we just need to get California Department of Ed approval, then we can submit that application. For future projects, you would have an architect, you'd retain an architect, they would develop a set of drawings, they would submit those drawings to DSA to get approved, and then they would give us that approval letter to submit your funding application with. Like I said, it's reimbursable. You cannot add square footage with modernization funding. So you can't add new classrooms, but, very important, but you can tear down and replace existing square footage. So if you have portables that you want to retire and replace, then you can use this funding to do that. And that's a way that a lot of districts utilize this funding, is to retire old portables and replace them with permanent square footage. This is a very high level overview of some really complex programs. So there are other nuances, and we're happy to come back and continue to have the conversation with the board as projects are identified. So your modernization eligibility, that's kind of hard to see. Right now, your current eligibility by site is almost $36 million. So that's significant. Now, in order to capture that $36 million, you need $24 million to match it with, right? So then your total project cost becomes around $60 million worth of projects. But that $36 million that you currently have can stretch your local dollars much further, right? So that's why most districts will tap into their eligibility at the state level, is by demonstrating to their community, look, for every dollar you give us, we're going to make it 2. We're going to go grab, we're doing our due diligence and grabbing everything that we can from the state that we're eligible for. Now, in addition to the $36 million, and you can see it's site specific here, Evergreen has almost 4 million. John Reed has 1.5 million. Margaret Hahn has, only 631,000. But as you go down, you'll see something called second round modernization funding. And what that means is that you participated in the program back in 2002 and 2003, and those buildings that you took money for back then are now becoming of age again. So you were very proactive 25 years ago, and you took funding for your permanent buildings at that time. So then in 2027 and 2028, which will be here before I want to admit that it will be here, you'll have another almost $12 million worth of eligibility. The second round modernization funding for portable classrooms is a little trickier. You have to, in order to tap into that, you have to prove that you actually replace the classroom with another classroom. So we're kind of leaving that to the side for now as OPSC is working through those regulations. But overall, this is great news for you for future projects. What we like to do before we assign this and match this to future projects is strategically match it to projects that you've already done that we might be able to get you in line for to get you reimbursed for money you've already spent, right? So the timeline at the state is quite long. Right now it's about 2 to 3 years from the day you submit your application until they pick it up and process it and fund it. And then there's also a lack of state bond funds right now. So the quicker we can get you in line for projects you've already done, the sooner you'll see that state funding. Because for modernization, it's really not an if, it's a when. It's the best guarantee of funding that you have from the state. Is there anything you want to add about mod? No. Any questions about modernization before I move on to new construction? Yeah.
Okay, this is very interesting. So I think Richard Crane is now Tech High. Is that correct? Richard Crane.
No.
What was
Tech High's not
Waldo?
there,
It was Waldo.
Yeah,
okay.
Technology High is sitting on a little over $2.5 million worth of eligibility.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering if they take one school elementary and then turn it into, does it cross over? Do you get a grandfathered in?
Yeah, so your facilities are a snapshot in time. So the sites where you had established that already, which was almost all of them, you had already established your eligibility, well, most of them, you had already established your eligibility at Waldo Ronert Elementary. And so in order for us to, we have to essentially reestablish it as a high school. We have to go take those original facilities and just say, now they're 9th through 12th grade classrooms. So it's a kind of a technical process at the state level, but the buildings retain their eligibility just at a different grade level. So where you see the total grants, you have elementary, middle, and high school grants, and then you have some SDC grants, severe and non-severe special ed students. The grants just change to a different category when you reestablish, but you maintain that snapshot in time of your facilities.
So if I was tracking correctly, you're saying that this is retro, so projects we completed years ago, we can get reimbursed for.
I'm going to let our procurement expert
Okay.
to the mic now.
There are a couple of complications that come into that. We just want to make sure that any project that we look back to that you've already completed, that you went through the proper procurement methods, that you followed the board policies, and because even though you did these projects in the past, you need to be able to meet current audit guidelines. So any project or any application that we submit, once you get your funding, you'll go through an audit on each individual application, much like you do annually with your annual district, financial audit or a bond audit. So we need to make sure that you have those boxes checked before we submit that application to make sure that, 5 years down the line, when you have your funding, you're ready to close it out, that you have everything lined up.
What are the top?
The top 5 things that you need to make sure that your program or your project has, you need to make sure you follow the proper public contract code, your procurement methods, that you're, if depending on the dollar amount and the scope of the project, that you advertised appropriately. You need to make sure that you went through a selection process for your architect that was assigned to that project. That's a really big component for the Office of Public School Construction that they look at. You need to make sure that you have DSA approval before you actually entered into a construction contract and got boots on the ground. And you need to make sure that your project was registered with the Department of Industrial Relations as well. So those are kind of the top items that you need to make sure. You also need to make sure that you can produce a general ledger for the expenditures for that project. So we know that, every 5 years, the county likely goes out to bid for a new financial system. You need to make sure if we're looking at a project that, maybe the funds were expended 5, 10, 15 years ago, that you can still produce a general ledger that your auditor can review for that project.
Okay, and those things are pretty standard, right? The top 5? Okay.
There.
And so if we got reimbursed, then those funds that were reimbursed would have to then be put back into modernization or rebuilding?
So you have what's called a Fund 35, which is if you might not have one now, but you will have one, you have had in the past. That's where the state funding comes into, is your Fund 35. And once you're reimbursed for projects you've already done, those funds aren't tied back to the same site. You can spend them on any high priority capital facility project. You can't move them into your general fund, but you can spend them on facilities.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think that's one thing that April and I have already done, and working with Josh, who's wonderfully, very organized, which is highest compliments to your facilities team. We already have evidence of most of those things that April just mentioned for the projects that we've identified in your strategic funding plan to get reimbursed for. The new construction program provides state funds on a 50-50 state and local basis. This is funded in a different way. This is the state looking at your capacity. So you establish your new construction eligibility. They count every single room as a classroom. You might be using 960 square feet for a counselor, but the state's going to say you should put kids in there and put the counselor in the closet. So they're brutal when it comes to counting classrooms for new construction, but that becomes your baseline eligibility. They come and visit all your sites. And it's calculated annually you can run the state's enrollment projection calculator, dozens of different ways using local bursts, county bursts. You can do a 5-year or a 10-year projection. You can include residential development. You can run district-specific student generation rates. So we have our expert demographer, Rob Murray, on staff, and he's run your new construction eligibility for you. He'll run it every year. He can project your new construction eligibility if you have a project. The reason that you'd want to look into that is that this is less of a guarantee of funding. You have to have the eligibility when you submit your application and when they pick it up, most importantly. So given that they're not going to pick up an application for 2 or 3 years and process it, you say, Jamie, we're building 5 classrooms, and I say, oh, you have, $17 million in eligibility today. Then the question is, well, will we still have it in a few years? And our office has the ability to confidently project forward and say, yes, we think you'll still have it when they pick up your application. We think you should move forward with it. So right now, the way that the state, and I should let everybody know who's watching, the state's enrollment projection calculator is it's not as accurate as having a real demographic projection of your community. I don't want to say broken. It's based on a standard cohort survival methodology. So if you're gaining, with the implementation of UTK, if you're gaining 40 kindergarten kids year to year right now because of that implementation, it's going to continue to project out that kind of growth over the next 10 years. So it's not accounting for that human element of saying, okay, we know this is a bubble of increase and it's not going to continue. But it's the only calculator we can use. We're required to use it. And they're in the process right now of making some changes. But for the time being, for today, you have a little over $17 million in eligibility. And it's all at the high school level, at the 9-12 level. You don't have to use this eligibility at the 9-12 level. If you had a project at the K-6 or 7-8, you could request what's called a use of grants and say, we want to use some of our 9-12 eligibility at this elementary school to build 3 new classrooms. We want to use some of this 9-12 eligibility at the middle school to build some classrooms. So that's a possibility. There's another program, and I'm going to let you talk again, April, at some point. There's another really interesting program, and just listening to the comments about the band room and understanding about your ancillary facilities, the way that schools have grown in California is that classrooms get added, right, as you increase enrollment. But things like multipurpose rooms and gyms, those don't expand concurrently as you're putting down portable classrooms to accommodate growth. So you can use your new construction eligibility to build what's called a minimum essential facility. So every middle and high school should have a gym and a multipurpose room, right? A food service building and a gymnasium. If it doesn't have one or the other, it automatically qualifies to use new construction funding to build one or the other. The rest of the elementary campuses and the remaining types of facilities like admin and library and toilets, those are site specific. So if you have an elementary school that was designed for 350 students and now it has 800 students, it's likely that based on that enrollment and the calculation for this program that you might have the eligibility to either expand or replace that multipurpose room. So again, this is one of those unique programs that's project specific that uses eligibility from new construction, but that can be really useful and really important for those ancillary facilities.
Is the minimum essential facilities in addition to the 17 million, or
No,
it means we
it
can
uses
use the
part of it.
17 million to do
Mhm,
that?
It
Okay.
uses part of that. And that number changes every year. New construction, the other important point is it is not reimbursable. New construction and minimum essential facilities, you must submit your funding application before you occupy those buildings. Facility hardship is another unique one that you don't want to qualify for, but if something happens that creates an imminent health and safety threat to students and staff, so think water intrusion that's gone undetected, and then you have extensive dry rot and something structural or is happening, glulam beams are delaminating, you have a gas leak. We had a high school up in Sacramento that had a gas leak, and they had to just turn off the gas for the rest of the school year until they could bust up all the concrete to find out where it was coming from. Those kinds of emergencies likely always qualify for facility hardship. Rather than waiting in line for 2 or 3 years, those projects jump immediately to the front of the line for funding. So we always tell our clients, if you have an emergency, call us. Because even though insurance might cover some of it, it might not cover all of it. And sometimes insurance doesn't cover it whatsoever. It's the same type of application. It's just has a couple additional requirements. And facility hardship projects range from an electrical panel all the way up to full school replacement. We had 2 entire schools in Napa replaced because they were close to fault lines. And so it's important program just to remember. And I'm going to hand it back over to April, who's going to talk to you about the future state funding outlook and the continuity of funding, and then present your dashboard.
So as I mentioned earlier, this statewide school facility program is traditionally funded by statewide school bonds. In the absence of that, the last one that was on the ballot was in 2020. There were some other things happening in 2020, and it was unfortunately numbered Prop 13. As well. So that was the first, yes, that was which has now been retired. There can be no more Prop 13s. But that was the last statewide school facility bond that was on the ballot in 2020, and it was the first in the history of the program that did not pass, unfortunately. But given that bond measure did not pass, the governor and the state legislature recognized that this program is incredibly important to districts all over the state to be able to adequately have the funding to maintain and replace their facilities. So they took monies from the general fund and allocated them to the SFP, the school facility program, to continue those applications to be funded at about $150 million a month. So that's what they've been doing for the last 3 fiscal years. We expect that there will be a new statewide school facility bond on the ballot based on what we're looking at right now, AB 247, that's working its way through the legislature. And now that the new budget package has gone through, now that we expect in the next couple of weeks to see that this AB 247 will be approved and hit the ballot for November. Given that, you can see this is as of the last state allocation board. We look at the available funding that was allocated to this program, and we look at the applications that are in line on either the workload list with the Office of Public School Construction or what's called the applications received beyond bond authority list. As Jamie mentioned, programs like modernization and new construction, those are called first in, first out. So you get your applications, you submit them to the Office of Public School Construction, and then they go on to the application received beyond bond authority list, and they're dated by, they're in line by the date of application submittal. So those applications, districts across the state continue to submit their applications, and that list continues to grow. So what we are looking at is what's the available funding left in that program what's on the workload and the application received beyond bond authority list, and then what's that delta. Right now, we have about a $3.4 billion funding delta that continues to grow as districts continue to submit their funding applications. So we're looking at that next bond measure in November of 2024. Expect it to be about $14 billion, and so it will adequately fund everything that is currently on the list. And we expect there to still be, as of the last state allocation board meeting, about $10.5 billion remaining to continue funding applications. Looking a little bit back at the history of the statewide school facility program, you can see here these are all the different bond measures and components that have funded this program throughout the years since its inception back in 1998. There has been a continuity of funding throughout the last 25 years of this program, and we expect that to continue. This is really the primary mechanism for school districts across the state to receive funding specifically for facilities. So we expect this program to continue to be funded in the absence of statewide school facility bonds. There were general fund allocations, and so we are looking to November to that next bond, AB 247. To be moving forward there and continue funding this program. Are there any questions on that? Everything that every new client that, it's not showing. Oh, we have to. So we had, did you want to talk about that?
I could.
All right, I'll hand it back over to Jamie.
I think just to wrap it up, that I think what April and I want to emphasize the most is it's important to get in line. So we have put together your strategic funding plan. We have identified projects. We have what's called your district dashboard. I shared it with Josh, who can share it with all of you. It's essentially where all of this information lives, right? Because we're up in Sacramento, we don't want to be working in a vacuum. So it's our way of communicating. Here's what we're doing. Here's the project we've identified. Here's how much estimated state funding we think we can get you. Here's the timeline for that. We cash flow it all out. We have all of your historical projects on there. And I think, we can happy to bring it back to a next meeting when we can show you the functionality of it. But it's a really useful tool in a way that we use to communicate everything we're doing to our clients. But again, important to get in line for funding. Anybody have any questions?
I was reading through the packet. There's a statement about phase 1. Is there
Yes.
more than one phase?
There is.
How many phases are there?
So the typical timeline our clients become like our family. I mean, when we work for clients, we're usually with them for several years just because of the amount of time it takes to see that application through from its inception to the end of it. Phase 1 was calculating all of your eligibility and preparing the strategic funding plan in your district dashboard. Phase 2 would be, after identifying those projects, getting the approval from Josh and you board members to move forward with those funding applications and go ahead and get all the remaining required approvals if California Department of Ed approval is still necessary to get that, and then to put the funding application package together. And that package is just, their state agencies that they love, their documents. We have a letter identifying how you're serving CTE in your school district. We have a resolution saying that we understand we're submitting this beyond bond authority, existing bond authority. There's the application itself. There's your Division of State Architect approval, your California Department of Ed approval. So phase 2 just includes all of that work necessary to get those applications put together and submitted to OPSC with a date stamped received.
Thank you.
You bet.
So we have access to that link. So when you click it and you get this list of
Okay.
all the schools and the project descriptions, these are things that we're asking for reimbursement on, right? Not
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry,
It's
I'm
okay.
usually really good with technology. My family calls me IT, but I can't.
No,
get
it's
on
okay.
the screen.
It caught me off guard because it said construction of one new scoreboard for Rancho Cotati. I'm like, I think they have that.
You did
But
that.
yeah,
So,
it's
yeah,
the
what
things that-
April and I love to do is we love to first find that you have all of this amazing eligibility, right, available because you were so proactive at the beginning of the program that everything's coming of age again. And then we like to say, oh, what have they done that we can get them reimbursed for? And it's important to let your community and it's not that you've been sitting not accessing this. You didn't have the eligibility until these last couple of years to be able to access these funds. And if you hadn't been so proactive in the beginning of the program, if you hadn't participated until 2010, you likely wouldn't have any eligibility until, 2035. So I think that's important to remember as well.
And then the cash flow fiscal year column is that's your projected date of when we would receive
Correct.
the reimbursement.
Yep. If we were able to submit now, I can't. April, can you? No, she can't. It's not working.
It's okay.
Yes, the cash flow is essentially when we would expect those state funds to hit the bank. So you're looking. We've identified almost $21 million worth of reimbursement projects for you that we could. You don't need to get those architectural plans have already been approved by DSA. We would just get CDE approval, and then we would get you in line to get that $21 million by 2027.
You might be my most favorite presentation in 4 years.
Thank you. I said good news, girls. Good news, team.
Someone is bringing us money.
So I have a question on timeline. So from, the ideal situation where, the application is put in, you guys started working for us and we have shovels in the ground. What is the best situation, the timeline? How long
Well,
would that take?
so these projects, it's 21 million. We're talking about getting you reimbursed. These are projects you've already done. For future projects, we can't submit a funding application until you have Division of State Architect approval. So if say you didn't have any projects that we could get you reimbursed for, and Aaron started designing a bunch of projects today, DSA is what, 6 to 9 months? But then even prior to submitting to DSA, you have conceptual design and schematic design, like all this work that gets done. So maybe 12 months to a year and a half. He's nodding yes. And then, so you'd be a year and a half away from even submitting an application, because we can work concurrently as things are getting designed to help strategically maximize your funding for the project. But then you can't submit your application for a year and a half, and then you wait the 2 to 3 years to get funded. So it's much quicker to look backwards, get reimbursed for things you've already done, and then take whatever eligibility is remaining, work with your architectural team as you move forward with your, with an implementation program for your capital facility projects to say, yes, we can get you funding here, here, and here. And sometimes, if you look on that projected modernization eligibility that's on that dashboard, we don't want to ever say, like, let the funding drive the facilities, but if you have eligibility now somewhere and then you have eligibility somewhere else in a couple years, maybe that's how you maybe that goes into how you prioritize those projects as well, right? Is there money available right now if we submitted an application, or is it going to be deferred?
So if we're potentially going to get $21 million back, but not till fiscal year 27, and
the state bond has to pass.
And the state bond has to pass.
Yes.
No problem. That's going to be fine. And then the modernization eligibility, that 60/40, we need to come up with 24 million. So are you saying we really only need to come up with 3 million? Like, can
No,
we use
so-
this $21 or $21 million refund to apply to slide 9?
So the $36 million that's on the 23-24 eligibility I shared with you,
Yeah.
see if you can get back to the presentation. That has not been drawn down by these $21 million yet. So
I know, but we need to come up with 23 to match
no,
it.
you've already matched it because you've already spent the 21. So out of that 35 million,
Yeah.
36 million, we've identified $21 million worth of projects we can get you reimbursed for. You wouldn't have to match that 21 million because you've already done the projects. So
this isn't new stuff coming forward. These are things that you found that we can get.
this is
back.
your bank of eligibility.
Yeah. Okay.
Of
All right.
of your bank at the state, which is what this is, we've identified $21 million at various sites, and that's in their funding applications tab. And then we would draw this down. You wouldn't have to match that 21 million with anything because it's money you've already spent.
Okay.
You'd have remaining around $15 million at various sites, and that you would have to match with roughly probably around 40%, 50%, $10 million, $12 million.
Okay. Great.
So thinking 2-3 years ahead, will the amount reimbursed go up with inflation?
It will. The construction cost index, as it varies each year, every January, the state allocation board increases the pupil grant amounts. That is what drives this eligibility number. up or down based on what the CCI does. There have been 2 years, 1 year where it didn't change at all, and just this last January where they actually reduced it, but that was because last year they increased it by so much, and the year before that they needed to make a small adjustment. But yes, these numbers in front of you will only grow. It's like having a bank account that just makes interest every year as inflation increases. And then, you know, as you take withdrawals, obviously it reduces, but. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're happy to come back anytime, and we're happy to answer any follow-up questions that you might have.
All right.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I was going to say,
like
you
your
both
stuff,
have
Josiah.
great taste.
Really?
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Most favorite presentation ever. They get the award for the year. We're going to start giving out awards. All right. Wonderful. Next we have reports and communications. Trustee reports on activities. All righty. Trustee Johnson?
Okay, I was ready for you this time. Well, actually, I got to be at the Rancho Cotati High School graduation. It was wonderful, and I want to thank all the seniors for those lovely parting gifts they gave me. I kept a couple of those orange golf balls, so thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Great. Trustee Nelson?
Break.
We can afterwards.
Okay.
Do you want to? Okay. Trustee Martin?
Yes, thank you. It was, you know, I like this time of year. It's my second round, and it's just fun to go to promotions and graduations, commencements, as well as the awards. The Rancho Cotati Awards Night was absolutely inspiring, as well as Tech High, just thinking of all the scholarships and academic achievements of our students. So that's where I've been, and it's been awesome.
Great. And then, yeah, I got to go to all the graduations, and it's so amazing to see our students and what they accomplished. And the band at Tech High played, and the band at Rancho played, and then we had singers, and just we have such amazing students and teachers and staff in our district. So it was really exciting to hear that. On a personal level, I have decided that I will be filing my paperwork to run for re-election. So I will let everybody know that. I know Maite's been asking me a lot, so there you go. And yeah, I'm looking forward to summer and getting a little break and then hitting the ground running in August. So wonderful. All right, Superintendent Turi.
This quick. Just closing out the year, attended promotions, graduations, awards, ceremonies. So much fun, so much celebration. We're in the hiring season. I thought we might be done, but we're not, so we're still working on that, which is exciting. We're looking at applying for a CTIG grant in August, which will provide us with a CTE coordinator and some other things to help our CTE pathways, which you see has been it's tied to funding and all kinds of things. So it's really important that we have a robust CTE program. I just want to mention how much money we have been able to bring in for different things this in the last few months. We brought in $560,000 from the Golden State Pathways for a counselor at Rancho for CTIG, or for CTE. We brought in $1.2 million for a community schools grant for 5 years. We brought in $1.2 million for preschool, which has since been rescinded, but we're still fighting that. We had about $50,000 for equity work, and we were able to pass a parcel tax. So we had some successful initiatives happening there. So excited about that. Looking forward to next year. We're working on planning a cabinet retreat and planning for the coming year and working on all the things that we've heard all this year and incorporating them into our plan for next year. So looking forward to the 24-25 school year. Thank you.
Great. We have no Williams uniform complaints, so we will take a 5-minute break. We call the meeting back to order at 7:50. All right, can I get a motion to approve item 10, consent agenda, items A through O?
I move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Personnel Services, approval of Wellness Center Coordinator job description.
With our community schools grant, one of the jobs that John Reed identified as a necessity is to have a wellness center coordinator. So this is a job description for that position. And letter B is the salary schedule to complement that.
Great.
I have one question
Yeah,
about the
go ahead.
Wellness Center. We have a grant approval for one more year, right?
The grant is for 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Can I get a motion to approve the Wellness Center Coordinator job description?
I'll motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Is there any questions about the salary schedule? Can I get a motion to approve the CSEA salary schedule revision?
I move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Approval of RIPSIA summer program salary schedule.
This is approving the salary schedule for our summer school teachers at a rate of $275. Is that correct? That's correct. Thank you.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the RIPSIA summer program salary schedule?
Also motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. 13A, Resolution 2024-2025, requesting fund transfer from Sonoma County Treasurer under Article 14, Section 6 of the state constitution. John?
We're asking the board to adopt this resolution, which is a fund transfer from Sonoma County Treasurer to any of our funds that go negative throughout the year, up to $16 million, which is a percentage of the property taxes that we are projected to receive throughout the year.
Great. Any question or discussion? I think it's 16 too after I said it. Any other questions? All right. Can I get a motion to pass Resolution 2024-2025 requesting fund transfer for Sonoma County Treasurer under Article 16, Section 6 of the state constitution?
I'll motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Roll call?
Trustee Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Aye.
Trustee Nelson,
Aye.
Trustee Wing.
Yes. Now we're just going to take a quick break for the presentation for Team Civic. We need to get them up on Zoom, so we will take a quick break until we get them up on the TV.
call the meeting back to order at 7:58. All right. So now we have our presentation from Civic X. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Oh,
Sorry, John, did you want to?
Introduce Charles Heath from Team Civics, and he helped us through the parcel tax, and he's going to go over the feasibility of going out for a bond in November and the timeline for your approval.
Great. All right, Charles, now you can take it away.
okay, sounds good. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Good evening. Yeah, I'm Charles Heath from Team Civics. I was the consultant to the district on the recent renewal of the parcel tax and also worked on your prior bond and parcel tax elections over the last decade plus. So with the successful renewal of the parcel tax, I know you have significant facility needs that you all have been hearing about tonight. And as you heard as part of the presentation related to how facility upgrades like you have are funded, sort of all signs point back to the passage of a local general obligation bond. Even accessing state matching funds typically requires the passage of a local bond measure so that you have that local match in order to be able to access the state funds. So it's important to remember that the rules governing bond measures limit school districts to only placing these measures before voters in the primary and general elections of the even numbered years. So basically your opportunities left at this point are you could potentially put a measure on this November's general election ballot, but your next opportunity after that would be the June primary election and the November general election in 2026, which means in all likelihood the funds wouldn't be available until late 2026 or early 2027. So given that timing reality, we wanted to spend a few minutes tonight just talking about what it would look like if we did want to consider evaluating a potential bond measure for this November's ballot. The slide that I believe is displayed there in the room kind of summarizes the key steps that we recommend. This is the same process we went through prior to your last bond measure, also prior to the most recent parcel tax renewal. Basically, we start by assessing the feasibility of the measure by looking at what it is that we may put on the ballot and conducting a statistically reliable survey of a sample of your local voters. That gives us a measurement of potential support, but it also gives us a sense of what types of projects and improvements that the voters prioritize. It tells us what sort of sensitivity there is to potential bond amounts and tax rates, and kind of how a proposal like this might fit into the current political landscape. Based on that research, we would bring back to the board some recommendations for what we think might be viable and how we might structure a measure to make sure that we can achieve the 55% voter approval that's required for a bond measure. And assuming that looks good, we then engage in an awareness building process. The school district, as you probably remember from the parcel tax, can't advocate for the passage of the bond, but you can provide impartial information about your facility needs and why local funding is needed to address those needs. That process typically also involves some outreach with key stakeholder groups, both within the district and in the community, to build broad consensus. And as we're doing that, we also develop your measure for the ballot, which would include the resolution that calls for the election, the ballot question that would be put before voters. And for a bond measure, it also includes the project list that would ultimately govern how you can spend bond funds. So it's basically a long list of projects that are eligible for bond funding. And if we go through that process, the culmination of the district's planning effort is to bring back that resolution for board adoption. And if you adopt that resolution, putting the measure on the ballot, we move into the independent advocacy campaign, which, as you all know from the March parcel tax election, an independent group has to form, raise private resources to advocate for the bond proposal. So the deadline for qualifying for this November ballot is quickly approaching. It is August 9th, and I believe you all have a board meeting on, or at least a special meeting scheduled for August 6th. So our plan, if you give us authorization to do this, would be to move quickly to conduct that initial feasibility assessment, bring back some information about the viability of a measure, and then work quickly to prepare that resolution for consideration in August if that's the direction that the data points us. That's sort of an overview of the general process. The timeline is tight, so if we want to keep the option of a 2024 election on the table, we really need to get moving right away. But happy to answer any questions about process, timeline, next steps, etc.
Do any of you guys have any questions? You can come up here and ask it too, if that's easier.
Hello there. Hi. So I guess I have a preliminary question on voter fatigue and just your thoughts on, we just had the parcel tax and what voter fatigue you might estimate it being.
Yeah, well, first of all, Measure A was approved by a strong margin, right? It was successful, and I think a big part of that was because it was a renewal of an existing tax. It didn't increase tax rates. So if we had just increased the parcel tax rate, I would be more concerned about voter fatigue and tax fatigue. With that said, these November general election ballots tend to be when lots of different proposals go before voters. I know that there are regional, local, statewide proposals that voters will be considering. And that's really what we would be looking to analyze in that survey of voters, is to see, in the current environment, given what voters are confronted with, knowing that they just considered the parcel tax renewal, is there the appetite to do this now, or are you better waiting until 2026? So that's what we would be assessing.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from Trustee Nelson or Trustee Johnson?
I don't have any questions based on the timeline and what our needs are. I think we need to look into the feasibility here.
Okay. I don't think you heard him, but he said based on the timelines, Trustee Nelson thinks we need to look into what our feasibility is that this would pass. Trustee Johnson?
Right. My concern is the time. That gives us just, a month and a half to do all the 1, 2, and 3 steps. So that's a lot of stuff to get done. It's I'm just concerned about the reliability on the data. Just 6 weeks to complete all of that.
So Trustee Johnson wants to know, is 6 weeks fast enough or enough time to do steps 1, 2, and 3, and will we get reliable data, or will we be rushing?
It's definitely a compressed time frame. I don't have concerns about how that would impact the validity of the survey data, because typically those surveys are conducted in about a 2-week time frame anyway, so that we really wouldn't be compressing that time frame. Really, the piece of this that's going to need to move aggressively is if we see viability in the survey, then we'll just have to be prepared to quickly develop that bond resolution, the project list, all that detail, and also quickly get some informational communication out to the public so they know what it is that we're proposing and why we're proposing it. It is a compressed time frame, but it's not an impossible time frame. If I thought it was impossible, we wouldn't be having this conversation tonight.
And then if it doesn't pass in November 2024, we can redo it in June of 26, right?
You can always come back at a future election, yes.
Okay. And then John, if we did not do this in 2024 and waited till June of 2026, what would this prevent us from doing? Like, would it actually hold projects back, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We don't have any money to do. We have very little money to do anything that we really need to do, which, things that I think of are like TK capacity, more classrooms for our newest grade level. I think that's probably the most important thing that we're looking to do with any money that we can come up with.
Okay. Any other questions for Charles? Okay. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we'll get rolling quickly on the feasibility assessment, and John, I'll give you a call in the morning and we'll get rolling.
All right. He says he's very excited for that phone call. All right. Thanks so much.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye. Oh, I should have told him you won't be there. All right. I did everything right? All right.
Okay. So next we have item 14, Board Services, Adoption of Local Control Accountability Plan 2024-2025.
All right, so we talked a bit about this last time, and I presented the LCAP, and tonight we are asking that you approve the LCAP for 2024 through 2025. It's really through 2027, sorry about that. If I think we went through it pretty thoroughly last time and answered any questions, but that's our request from you tonight.
Great. Any questions about the new LCAP? All right. Can I get a motion to approve the adoption of the Local Control Accountability Plan LCAP for 2024 to 2028 is what it would be. No, 2027.
I move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Item B, adoption of 2024-2025 budget.
Similarly, we're looking for the board to adopt the budget for fiscal year 24-25. The Ed Code requires that the board adopt the budget prior to July 1st of each fiscal year.
Great. Any questions about the budget that John presented? Can I get a motion to approve the 2024-2025 budget?
I'll move that we approve
Okay.
14B.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Item C, fiscal update and planning.
Poor Left's not here. Of course, he's the most interested in enrollment. But I have the final enrollment report I'll give for the year, which is as of May 31st. We had a total of a -7 enrollees throughout May. We had 14 enter the district, 1 through private, 7 from out of county, 2 from within the county, and 4 other. And then we had 16 exit the county, from out of county, or exit to out of county, and 2 within the county, and 3 other for 21 exiting, for a total of -7. 6,167 students were enrolled as of May 31st.
Great. Thank
So
you.
I hate to put you on the spot here, and I know Left's the one that's always asking questions, but if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the school year, it was around 6,000?
I believe our CVED's enrollment was 6,155.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. All right. Item D, public disclosure and ratification of the 2024 to 2027 tentative agreement and collective bargaining agreement with Cotati Roanoke Park Educators Association.
Yes, we're seeking approval of the tentative agreement that we bargained with our labor partners. This also includes the AB 1200 that you mentioned with the addendum.
Any questions or discussion? I just wanted to take a moment to thank both RIPSIA and our district personnel for trying IBB. I know it was a lot of work and it was a lot of meetings and it was a lot of time and a lot of training, but I can say with confidence that this was a lot better bargaining than 3 years ago or for the last contract. So just thank you everyone for being willing to give it a try and for all agreeing and going into it with an open mind. So thank you to everyone. Can I get a motion to approve the public disclosure and ratification of the 2024-2027 tentative agreement and collective bargaining agreement with Cotati Roanoke Park Educators Association?
I move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Next up is the proposal to negotiate the successor to the 2021-2024 contract with California School Employees Association, CSEA, Chapter 645.
Yes, we'll be entering into bargaining with our CSCA labor partners, and we're asking for your approval.
Great. And we'll be doing IBB with them as well, right? Great. Nope, we're just saying, yeah, we're just letting people know that we're doing it. So. Right. So we sunshined them back a couple months ago, and they have now come back and said yes. And so now we are opening up negotiations with CSEA. So. Very good. Item F, Resolution 2024-2026, approving the district spending plan for educational protection account funds for 2024-2025.
We're looking for the board to adopt this resolution, which is the approval of the district spending plan for the education protection account, or otherwise known as EPA funds for 24-25. The actions necessary for the district to receive the estimated $10 million in revenue, and it's important to remember that EPA funds do not represent new revenue to the district or additional. They're just a portion of the local control funding formula revenue to which the district is entitled. Yes, absolutely.
I think we're done with the new money part of the meeting. All right, any questions about the resolution? All right, can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2024-2026, approving the district spending plan for education protection account funds for 2024-2025?
Move that we approve 14F.
Can I get a second?
I'll second. Michelle.
Sharing is caring. Trustee Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Aye.
Trustee Nelson,
Aye.
Trustee Wing.
All right. Resolution 2024-24, in the matter of school and classroom capacity limits for purposes of granting or denying an interdistrict transfer request.
Yes, we bring this forward every year. We want to make sure that we are able to accommodate the needs of our students who are trying to transfer in. So this allows us to deny based on capacity. So.
Okay. Any questions? All right, can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2024-24 in the matter of school and classroom capacity limits for purposes of granting or denying an interdistrict transfer request?
I move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Trustee Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Aye.
Trustee Nelson,
Aye.
Trustee Wing.
Yes. Item H, ratification of the 2024-2025 RIPSIA MOUs.
Yes, so these are the MOUs that we bargained through the IBB process, and we're asking for your approval this evening.
Great. Any questions? Can I get a motion to approve the ratification of the 2024-2025 RIPSIA MOUs?
I'll move to approve.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Next up, we have the first reading of board bylaw and Exhibit 9323.2, articles by the board.
Yes, this allows the board a little more flexibility if there's a need to have someone teleconference in or be online. In the past, it was very strict that it had to happen with so much notice, and this gives a little more flexibility.
Oh, that means Left can call in next time. All right, thank you. Item J, approval of the 2024-2025 local performance indicator self-reflection.
And we ask that the board read and approve the 2024-25 local performance indicator self-reflection tool, which is we are measuring the district's progress to implementing the state academic standards, and the report results to our governing board, you. And at this point, we do it at the same time as as the 24-25 LCAP is adopted. That's what this is for tonight.
Great. Any questions or discussion? All right. Can I get a motion to approve the 2024-2025 local performance indicator self-reflection?
I'll move that we approve 14J.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Annual update of LCAP Every Student Succeeds Act, federal addendum template.
Yeah, we ask that the board acknowledges the annual update. It's not something that needs to be approved. It's an opportunity for us to align federal monies to our LCAP strategies and plans. So we ask that you acknowledge it.
Great. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, so this is basically just saying that we're going to do our part to get appropriate Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV whenever it applies to our LCAP.
And that we'll use it in a way that supports our activities in the LCAP.
Great. Thank you. Acceptance of gifts and donations to schools and district.
We have one donation this month for Rancho Cotati from Daniel Reed for $31, and we thank Daniel for his donation.
Yes, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the acceptance of gifts and donations to schools and district?
I move to approve.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Future business and agenda items. Trustee Johnson? Trustee Nelson?
I did just want to say that with the CivX, that I was impressed with their analysis for the parcel tax previously. So I know we're kind of in a time crunch, but I think they did a pretty good analysis of the political climate last time. So I think we'll have a better idea when they're done where we stand for any kind of bond.
Yep. Great. Trustee Martin?
Pass.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm also at this time planning on running for reelection. So.
Great. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, then we will see everyone. Hope you have a wonderful summer. Hope you guys have a good break. And we will see everyone on August 6th at the next special meeting. The meeting's adjourned at 8:19.